Wherever he wants to be, we can tune him in. And I got this game and the other things.
Ladies and gentlemen, I don't know if they told you already, we do have some breakfast snacks if you're interested at all. Something to drink and something to snack on if you're interested.
There is a version of a lake that they are promoting. It's called the Alternative D with
May that be recommended.
So that would be, or is that the alternative one?
Yes, it includes 11, that is correct.
And so they came up with a counter proposal for a slightly smaller lake, still another lake, with a dam. they're really pushing.
Okay, it's in here, I guess. D.
Is another lake, but a slightly smaller lake, slightly scaled back lake. But largely a lake. And the major difference would be it's only creates a 6 foot high backwater, to the creeks, as opposed to an 8 foot one, which the whole road. That's one difference. It's not a whole lot of differences, though.
Hey guys, so I think besides maybe 2 people I was expecting, this might be it. So would you guys mind if we all move a little closer that way? We can share a mic, it'll be easier for this one to pick up, so that the folks online can hear us. Okay,
Do you want me to move to
Ricardo, can you hear me?
Well, we never watched this online.
I'll come up and say, if there's not gonna be any.
Yes, I can hear, Juan. There's a little bit of resonance, but I can hear.
Okay, great, great. Okay, and I think that we're all gonna be sitting pretty close to each other here. Oh, okay.
Albert, I don't know whether it would be possible to move the camera a little further down so that we see just from the top of the screen and down, so that I can see some of the public as well.
And is there any way that, we don't have any other sound systems?
Carla, is that better?
Yeah, that's good.
Okay.
Yeah, here it is. Should say combination. This has to be commission board. I'm not familiar with the commission board. It's just another summary of the DEIS, draft environmental impact statement. And there is an alternative D, and it's a lake with a dam. And it's just a scaled back lake. It's still like a look. It's just, they call it the U. The proponents are calling it the U. But.
I'm Jill, I need a bond policy director, and I just brought these in, I want to share your copy, but this is kind of the clip notes of George Strass.
Tell me your last name.
It's Max Terrell.
Oh, yes, I've been getting your emails.
It's nice to see you.
Okay. Oh,
I got extra too, can I give you a couple extra? He says take notes, I go, I'm not taking notes. Yeah, it's kind of a quick note version.
So Ron, the papers that got handed out, is there another copy?
Yeah, I'll get you that.
The commander's report?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Is that okay?
That's the commander's
Carl,
report.
can you say something?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Carl, Abby, can y'all hear? No, I'm trying to, yes, to
Yep,
speak.
got it. Sure. Did you want to actually present on?
How can I control the
Great.
presentation?
Hello. How are y'all?
Great, getting that. I mean, Carl, say something. To make sure I'm not late.
I know I saw you on the front porch of my next door neighbor's house,
Okay.
Leon Myers.
Well, guys, I want to get started. We're a little late, and people are gonna, one or two of my people might show up, but that's fine. I do want to start with introductions, though. Many of us have been working together for months now, and, but we also have people who may have attended previous meetings. Regardless, let's all make sure that we know who we are. I'll start with myself, Juan Fernandez. I'm gonna be doing a lot of talking, so I'll say why I'm here, my interest in this whole thing for my presentation. Money, popcorn to you.
Hello, my name is Buddy Donald III. I, like Juan, am interested, I have a serious interest in what's going on, the plans that they actually have for us as citizens here in Jackson, Mississippi, when it comes to water.
Morning. Good to be with you. I'm Jill Mastro-Totero. I'm the policy director for Audubon Delta. And I live just outside Jackson. I've actually been working on some version of Fighting the Lake project for almost 20 years when I lived down in New Orleans. So I have a long history with this project, and we're very focused on ensuring that people in Jackson who are experiencing flooding get the meaningful flood relief that they deserve, while we also protect the Pearl River and downstream communities and wildlife. So I appreciate a chance to be with you this morning.
My name is Scott Crawford, and I live in Jackson, Mississippi. I live on Eubanks Creek. And I experience a lot of flash flooding. That's my interest.
I'm Mindy Bowers, and I back up to Purple Creek. And in '79, my house was 8 feet under. So I flooded in 2020 in my backyard, and so I'm concerned about, are they ever gonna do anything?
Ms. Brown?
Hey, I'm Donna Ladd with the Mississippi Free Press, and before that, the Jackson Free Press. And you may know that I and my team have been writing about various alternatives for flooding and lake projects for 2 decades now. And so I'm here to, Juan invited me to, well, for journalism, but to kind of inform the public. One of the things I would like to say to y'all is if it's okay with you, I'd like to record the comments, but if there's anybody here who doesn't, you can tell me even afterward if you don't want to be quoted or if you want me to check with you about your quotes. If, either way. So tell me if that's okay with you. Just tell me if that's the case.
Same offer. This one, would you introduce yourself and tell us maybe what interests you in this meeting? Take your time. Sorry, you're eager.
Actually, I was just invited by my neighbor to come and see what's going on with the meeting, and I'm just interested in what, I live over off Old King Road, near Parkway Drive. I'm just trying to see what I need, get some information on what I need to know.
I'm Deion Thompson. I'm one of the cab members. I live in Canterbury, and my main concern is the Pearl River flooding and also the flash flooding as well. You can quote me if you want to.
Thank you.
Jim, what's the cap record?
I'll tell you, since I'm standing as the Communities Activities Board, we're 3 communities with one common agenda. My name is Carl Nichols, and I'm with the Parkway Association, and I'm here as a member of the CAB. Also, we just want to make sure that our community gets the information that they need in knowing what's going on with the then all of us being a part of the solution and participating in trying to get these, situations corrected and better for our community.
And for a little deeper information, the Communities Advisory Board. So you've met Ms. Ramona. She couldn't be here today. She's the executive director of a nonprofit called Mississippi Communities United for Prosperity. This body, this like unincorporated, unofficial, well, it's a real group, just not incorporated, which call ourselves Three Communities, One Common Agenda, is like was established to make sure that as we work, Mississippi Communities United for Prosperity does work in these three neighborhoods, that we would have residents central to our activities. And so it's funny, it's the advisory board, but community advisory board, but over time it changed to activities because I think we do more acting than just advising. And I appreciate that a whole lot. Albert, I think you might be the one left, I know to meet the side and stuff like that.
Hello, I'm Albert Williams. I help with technical stuff with him.
So, I mean, this is a silly question here, but I'm gonna ask the opposite of here. Who here has not heard of the quote-unquote one leg? All right, go to the next leg then. Who here thinks they could describe the one leg to a friend, for example? Anyone? Donna, I know you can. You've been running for too long, and Jill, you're also excluded from this. Money. So, Money, would you also give us just a very quick brief on your background too, before you give a description?
Yes, served in the United States Army. I served in the United States Army for 24 years. I was an engineer while I was in, so I'm familiar with situations like this. Something that really sparked my curiosity about this altogether was in the bottom of 1995 when they had the United States Army, we had troops crossing the river. We had told them as surveyors that you don't move your troops from out of here, you risk flooding. You risk losing not only equipment, but probably even life. They didn't listen, and it happened. It was all over on CNN. The main thing is a lot of us smaller people have a tendency to get overlooked, and it is quite unfortunate. We just had a meeting the other night, and when we were listening to what the people had to say from the United States Army Corps of Engineers, what they said as opposed to what we're looking at are two completely different things. So if I was to explain to someone something about the One Lake project, it would be more or less, there are some things in reference to flood prevention, but just in short, to keep from confusing people, it would be more or less their plan versus our plan for flood protection. It's not as strong as what we know it can. I've come up with some ideas myself about river channelization. Hopefully they will listen later on down the line because it will really help the city of Jackson out altogether. Believe me, us of the situations that happened back in 1979, 1983, 2020, and 2022 as well. There's no excuse for why that should ever happen again.
So I think, Money, you took care of both of these, so maybe the question is it's misleading because I think you're both, we pretty much all consider ourselves friends here, I think, I hope. And we're also us, so would you go to the next slide, please? Yeah, so one thing that I had in mind when I had these questions is that for myself, I grew up hearing about this project for a long time, a lot to the Jackson Free Press, big thanks. And I think there was also always a layer of mysticism around it, like, or mythology. And it took a long time to figure out, even that the One Lake is part of a broader thing, right? Pearl River Flood Risk Management Project. So that's the whole idea with holding this meeting, is to help demystify it. And I'm very glad that you guys are here in order to sort of demystify it with me. I think that most of us have already talked about a lot of the commander's report. So this is going to, I think, be a good time to ask questions, fill in the gaps, things you might not know. Help those who haven't been following it as closely as we have, like Mindy or Peggy, and I will call you guys out. Just, you know, we are resources to you guys, and you guys can ask questions that will help us understand it better. So thank you all for coming here. Would you hit the next slide, please?
Hey, Juan,
Hey.
sorry.
Hey.
Could I just inject one,
Absolutely.
I guess,
Small group.
part of the narrative? But I think some of the folks in this room well know, who have been following this proposal for many years. But it actually is the brainchild of a local real estate developer. His name is John McGowan. He's actually an oil man, and you know, put this proposal together. It used to be 2 lakes, and then it morphed, so now it's kind of our most recent reference is 1 lake. But it's all about economic development, and it's been very well publicized with that affiliation, right? And so what we had continued to, as Audubon, as other organizations that have been involved in this campaign for many years, recognize that it's basically a real estate economic development project. So creating a lake for new developable waterfront property under the guise of flood control. And I think as Juan will lead us through some of the commander's report, this is from the Corps, okay? It's from the Corps' kernel that just passed the torch to the new kernel, but there's many pieces in the report that demonstrate that 1 lake is a bad deal, and that we really need to focus on kind of the elevations and the, you know, helping the river move and all of those good things. So I think it's a great learning opportunity to be here together, but at its heart, it is a real estate development project. It's not about protecting the people of Jackson who need the help. And that's, you know, for me personally, I think that is just a travesty, because as Money said, like, the flooding is gonna happen again. We need the solution, but we know 1 lake, as you'll see in the commander's report, is not it. So I just have to put that out there.
And I'm going to talk a little bit about these like background of people. But before we did, Carl reminded me that I told him I would get this little introductions, and then we might have an invitation. Carl, would you bless us with that?
Sure. Just before we pray, I want to take this opportunity. Do not turn that on.
No, turn it on.
This is a hard win for me. Is that what you want?
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right. Want to thank Hanging Moss Road Church of Christ for allowing us to meet in their space, in the communities that we are a part of, and we've heard a lot about Hanging Moss and the flooding that they deal with as well. So I want to thank Hanging Moss congregation and the leadership, Brother Pittman, for allowing us to use their space today. And I hate that I didn't do this before we turned on the cameras, but you know, we're just going to clean up behind ourselves when we finish. Let us pray. Our God and our Father, we thank you for this great day that you blessed us with, and we thank you for this opportunity you give us to come together, to be able to serve our communities, to be able to gain information that can help us to better understand the process by which our situation can get better. We thank you for the presenters, and we pray that you will give them what they need in order to present effectively. We also pray for each person that's represented here, the fact that you took the time out of your schedule, and the fact that you, God, has given us that strength and that opportunity to come together. Continue to bless our efforts as we try to serve. Continue to bless our mindsets as we try to improve, and continue to bless us as we try to be great representatives for you. We continue to say thank you again for all who are here and all who will be coming at different junctures, that all of us can come together to make this situation of flooding in Jackson area and in our communities better for us and prevent it even. Again, we say thank you for your blessings. It's in the name of Jesus that we pray. Let us all say amen. Also, before I sit or stand, I'm probably going to try to do a roaming mic. So if you do have something that you're going to say, then I'll probably bring the mic to you so we can make sure that you heard it.
That's great.
Okay? All right.
So guys, I wanted to start with, we talk about the One Lake, and then I will talk about the Pearl River Flood Risk Management Project. When you see something in like Mississippi Today or WLBT, sometimes I think, somewhat opinionated here, but that it's easy to conflate the two. So I wanted to sort of lay out multiple sentences that differentiate that the Pearl River Flood Risk Management Project is, I call it an unfulfilled legacy of the Eastern flood. Just a few years following that disaster, Congress authorized funding for a flood risk reduction project on the Pearl River. The Corps have suggested multiple plans since then in the past 40-something years. But none of their plans have been adopted, and included, we won't go there. They've proposed multiple things, none of them have been adopted. The One Lake is a plan that local interest, developers, as Phil pointed out, want to implement using that federal funding. And so that there's my sort of two definitions contrasted with each other, or their relationship with each other. Next slide, please.
Can I ask a question about that?
Absolutely.
So, right after 79, there's been funding all along for something to take place?
So Congress authorized a project. I don't know, I don't think it's the same thing as like having money set aside, but they're saying like we will put, once a project is approved, we have this much money. It started at 90 million, became 130, and now it's at 220.
And didn't they just approve funds a year ago or so?
I think that's the 220. Yeah.
Okay, so they added that to
So
whatever?
after 79, the Corps approved, thanks. So after 79, the Corps initiated a planning process, so they funded that planning process, right? And then there were several different planning processes which lead us to today, essentially. And so as Juan is saying, 2 or 3 years ago now, that Congress appropriated $220 million to actually do a project. So the money is there to actually start helping people. Unfortunately, as we know, it's never straightforward, right? So this is the planning process we're in. Let's use it to our advantage, right? And start getting movement on flood relief for people.
So you're going to hear a lot this term, draft environmental impact statement, or DEIS. That's the legally required study for federal infrastructure investments. It's the study, when you hear that a new study just came out on flood control, that's what that's referring to. You can get this presentation online. Here's your QR code right there. So I'll let you guys take a picture. You can also use tinyURL, so tinyurl.com/Commander's Companion. I think I'm sweating at the thought that this might go out to the public, but take pictures. No, it's fine. It's, no, that's good. I'm kidding. Next slide, please. I also wanted to just remind you guys that, well, I think that these meetings, and the reason we're holding them is to make sure that you understand a lot of the lingo and what's going on. The important meetings are the ones that are being held by the Corps of Engineers. Those are the dates, July 10th, July 11th. July 10th here in Jackson, there's going to be one at the Mississippi Public Broadcasting Auditorium, that's off Ridgewood Road, and one in the Mississippi Trade Mart. It's going to, we don't know if there's going to be opportunities for the public to speak. There weren't at the online meetings a couple of days ago. You could type in things in the chat. But it is important to be there. Next slide, please. So, in order to demystify the One Lake, or demythologize, just to make it real, we're going to follow a document that came out with the DEIS. It's called the Commander's Report. I was asked yesterday by Scott, why is there a Commander's Report on top of a DEIS? I don't know. There is a purpose at the top, and Jill, so let me get to the purpose, and then I want to hear any additions to that. But to me, it's like almost like a cover letter for the whole document. So some questions that we are going to be asking here is who's the commander, who's he addressing, and who are the decision makers in this project, in the Pearl River Flood Risk Management Project. 3 questions, pretty easy, but I'm going to use the last one also to, so to speak, tell you where I'm coming from on this whole thing. Would you mind going to the next slide, please? So why do I care? I don't live in a flood-prone area. I live in Belhaven, although that neighborhood does have some flooded areas, but I believe that the planning process for how we define our infrastructure is corrupted in this state. I believe it's been captured as a term where people who have money, who have connections, affluent people, are using their affluence to control the planning process and to use it ultimately to perpetuate their wealth. And I want to show a little bit of that, talking about who the decision makers are. Next slide, please. So guys, 2 agencies, Corps of Engineers, Rankin-Hines, Pearl River Flood Drainage Control District. Next slide, please. So, the guy who's going to make a decision, it's the Office of the Assistant Secretary of the Army for Civil Works, long name, sometimes we'll just use the term ASA, or more formally ASA-CW. He's going to make the call. This guy's the current ASA, Michael Connor. He's going to be responsible for determining if the One Lake or any other locally preferred plan meets federal laws and regulations. And so he determines what project is constructed. I say he, but to be clear, he's got an office, he's got a staff, right? Next slide, please. There's another character here from the Corps of Engineers, that's Colonel Klein. And he's with the Corps, he was, past tense, the commander of the Vicksburg District. He oversaw the project management of the draft environmental impact statement. He wrote the commander's report, which some of you have in front of you, and his assignment ended recently. So, for example, in that meeting we had a couple days ago virtually, we got to see a little video of him standing next to the new commander, sort of introducing themselves. Next slide, please. So let's move on to the local folks. These are our local representation in this project. The Rankin-Hines Pearl River Flood Drainage Control District. I'm not going to say that name again this whole presentation. It's also just known as the Levee Board or the Non-Federal Interest. NFI is that second. This is the group that chooses what is considered the locally preferred plan. So they have, this group of men have decided that One Lake is the locally preferred plan. It's 6 members, but there is a 7th board seat that's reserved for a governor's appointment, but it's been vacant for a while. Jill, do you know how long that seat's been vacant?
No,
Okay.
I think, by design.
It feels that way.
These are kind of the who's who, Boy
So I told you guys that I felt that this process was captured. So even though the levy board is in charge, they're the local sponsor or the non-federal interest. They have to defer the responsibilities to a third party. It's a one-leg promotional group. The levy board retained the Pearl River Vision Foundation, or PRVF, for this work. It used to be called the Two Lakes Foundation, so Jill mentioned a developer called John McGowan. He and several other folks started this foundation to promote a lake project. Over the years, they've embedded themselves in the levy board. They wrote the levy board's One Lake study, which we'll cover in a minute. And they also collaborated with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers in creation of this new study. And that term collaboration is terms that they use, you will see in the commander's report. Next slide, please. So, to summarize, two agencies, federal, Corps of Engineers, the levy board, and that levy board has has deferred responsibilities to a One Lake promotional group, the Pearl River Vision Foundation. Do you guys have any questions right here so far? I'm going to try to stop for any questions at the end of these small sections. But if not, let's keep rolling to the actual commander's report. I had reserved this to thank Ms. Ramona, but she is not here. So let's move on. That's okay. Let's keep moving. So guys, this is the real reason for meeting here. It's a walkthrough of the commander's report with my very biased commentary, although I do try to keep it factual. I will tell you what is sort of my opinion or reading of things. And this is a memo about the Pearl River Flood Risk Management Project from the commander of the Vicksburg District to the Assistant Secretary of the Army. Next slide. So some of you have the document in front of you, but if you don't, that's also online. tinyurl.com, Pearl River Commander's Report. Okay, I'll stand right here the whole time. Next slide, please. So this first section, and the way I've structured this presentation is section by section. If you look at your report, the paragraphs are numbered. I would call those sections. So there's one that starts with a 1. The summary of that is it states the purpose of this document and gives some background information. So next slide. And what's the purpose? It's a report from the guy on the left, Colonel Klein, to the guy on the right. This is supposed to assist the ASA, the Assistant Secretary of the Army, in his decision for what plan this region should move forward with. Next slide, please. Now, towards the bottom of the page, well, really most of that first page is actually a law. It's the law that authorizes this whole thing. And I want to emphasize two key components of the law that authorized flood control for Jackson. So this is a foundation slide, a little background. There is something called NED benefits. That stands for National Economic Development, which is just a standardized approach of calculating if a federal investment is worth the cost. And it's dictated by federal laws. It's not, someone just kind of drawing things on a napkin and saying this is good. There's rules and regulations for calculating national economic development benefits. You express NED benefits as a benefit to cost ratio, or BCR. And so I'm going to very often throw out that term BCR. I'll try to remind you that it's benefit to cost ratio. But the big thing to look for is 1. It's a threshold. A benefit cost ratio of 1 means that for every dollar you invest, the public gets $1 back. So just to give you some other examples, if you have a BCR of 2.7, that means that the public is going to get $2.70 for every dollar that was invested in a project. That's good. A BCR of 0.4 means that the public only gets 40 cents for every $1 invested in the project. So if a project is feasible or not is determined by these calculations. That second example, 0.4, not feasible, losing investment. The 2.7, feasible because it's above 1. Next, please. There's also a second term that you're going to hear a lot in this report, and you'll hear a lot if you go to the course meetings, and that's flood damage reduction. So what is it? Why does it matter? How is it measured? The metric that the Corps uses is EAD, which stands for Expected Annual Damages, and that's a computation used to estimate the cost of flooding experienced by a region annually. There's a whole booklet on it. Quite honestly, I haven't read it. But this metric is central to deciding what to implement. And just to put a little, put something in perspective, within the first few pages of the DEIS, you can find what the expected annual damages in Jackson are for flooding. So according to their metrics, the total is $42.3 million. And they actually do they're really sweet, and they divide it into river flooding and flash flooding. So I put those two metrics up there for you to see. So it tells you that river flooding is about 2/3 of the anticipated or the calculated flood damages in the region. The other third is flash flooding. Next slide. Thank you. Now, why am I telling you about national economic development benefits and flood damage reduction? Okay, back to that paper, back to your paper, and there's that big law. This project, the Pearl River Flood Risk Management Project, was authorized by Congress, and it has to meet certain requirements, and they're stated in that law. It's taking me too long reading that law over and over to try to figure it out. So, it's sometimes legal convolution. So here's Juan's summary of that law. This law authorizes the ASA, remember Assistant Secretary of the Army, to construct the project generally in accordance with the locally preferred plan. So as a reminder, the One Lake is the locally preferred plan. But before any construction can take place, the Secretary must identify a plan that maximizes national economic development benefits. So remember, that means that you maximize the benefit cost ratio. And that's referred to as the NED plan. So you're going to hear that term a lot, NED plan, in the meetings. You probably heard it last Thursday. Once they identify the NED plan, the Office of the Secretary must compare the flood protection benefits of the NED plan to the One Lake plan and ask, does the One Lake provide a lower, an equal, or a greater level of flood damage reduction? If the One Lake provides a greater or equal level of flood protection benefits compared to the National Economic Development Plan, then the Secretary can construct something. But only after that comparison is made, and that's a huge thing in this document. So on Thursday, you heard a lot of well, we saw this plan, but we realized that it's not the NED. We saw this plan, this is likely the NED. They're trying to identify what is the plan that maximizes the benefit cost ratio. Next slide. So this is the Corps' way of summarizing the process.
Would I make a comment?
Oh, Ricardo, let me get this real quick. I completely forgot about the online post. I'm sorry. So 3 things that the Corps said that they're doing in preparation of DIS. They're identifying an NED plan, comparing the level of flood protection, and assessing environmental acceptability and technical feasibility of alternatives. That third step is really important, y'all, and my sincerest apologies to Jill for leaving out a big thing. Environmental acceptability is a key factor in here. It's just one that I haven't been so focused on. But Ricardo, hey, are you there?
Yes, I am. Let me see. Let me bring on myself in the camera. I just wanted to point out, I think that is a very good introduction that you're doing, Juan. as a summary of what this is about. But I wanted to point out that both in the calculation of the cost benefit ratios, which is one of the elements that has to be taken into account, and then in the determination of the economic benefits, uh, we are going to be looking, or those are made by putting together tables of numbers. And those numbers, of course, is a great place to hide, for the devil to hide. Not only the devil is in the details, but the devil also can hide in the details. Uh, so I am going to, well, I'm going to point out how there are many things that by including them in the calculation of benefits or not, and by including them in the calculation of flood damage reductions or not, can shift those numbers. And you will see both in the language and in the conclusions that, well, the report makes quite an effort to steer the report towards a conclusion. In other words, you could approach this report in two ways. One, let's look at the facts and find out what is the best conclusion, the best recommendation that we can provide. Or you can say, I want to arrive to that recommendation over there. I am going to present the numbers and and talk about them so that I arrive to where I want to arrive. Uh, Both lead to the same conclusion, maybe, but they are quite different in the intent, of course.
Yes.
Just that.
Well, this is a great opportunity, Ricardo, to introduce everyone online. So, Ricardo, would you introduce yourself to the folks here and to the folks online, even though everyone online knows you?
Well, hello, and thank you for inviting me here, Juan, and everybody who's there. My name is Ricardo Lopez Torrijos. I am talking to you from a small town in northern New York, Albany, New York. And I have spent a lot of years of my life focusing on these things of flood, flood issues, water issues. So I was brought to this project as a contribution to the efforts that the Mississippi Citizens United for Prosperity is sponsoring, and as an advisor to the Three Communities One Common Agenda, so that to help you understand both the process and what the report says, and to provide, to help you put together comments on the report.
And speaking of, Ricardo, I'm probably going to ask you for comments after every section. Is that okay?
Sure.
I'm making you start here. Now, Mr. Moto, I'm glad you're here. Would you introduce yourself?
Sure. Good morning, everyone. I'm at a conference in Atlanta, and they are talking about the water situation that took place in Jackson. So, could you get the door for me, please? I'm going to step out for just a second. And I do think that we're going to get some support from Dr. David at Tennessee State to also look at the DEIS. My name is Ramona. I'm the executive director of MCOP, and we have been working with the three communities there, and for over a year now, looking at the flooding issue and hoping to prepare community for to respond to the Corps' DEIS. So that's who I am. And thank you, Juan. Thank you, Ricardo, and everyone, and our CAB, our Community Action, Community Advisory Board for all of the work that they have done in this last year. It's just really incredible. So, Kate, I'm not there in person, but I'm listening in. Thank you, Juan.
back to you, Greta, if you're there. Abby, could you say hi to everyone?
Hi, y'all. I think I've met most, if not all of you. I'm the executive director of Pearl River Keeper. We're a local nonprofit dedicated to clean water for all, and happy to be here. Thank you.
So Greta did just send a message telling us that she cannot unmute. And I'm going to assume that there's a second part to that says she's happy to be here, though. Give us that thumb up. Not even a thumbs up. Okay, let's move on. Would you go back to the presentation, please? So guys, to summarize, this report is a letter to help the Secretary of the Army make a decision about flood control for the region. Jill, you said that there was a reason for this document that...
I suspect, actually, having, worked on a lot of environmental impact statement type projects for over 20 years now, it's pretty unique to actually have a commander's report. Thank you, Carl, sorry. I was going to say, having a long history of working on environmental impact statement type projects like this for over 20 years, it's very unusual to have a commander's report that has come out with a draft document like this. I think that there are a lot of important statements that the colonel of the Vicksburg district, the former colonel, has highlighted that I know Juan will be leading us through. I think it's a reflection that the Corps has had a long history of actually opposing the One Lake project. In 2008, the Corps of Engineers told the local levee board, if you want to continue moving forward with a lake project, you're on your own. And so the Corps actually walked away from the planning process because the local representatives here in the Jackson metro area refused to move off of a lake project. So we've now kind of come full circle, and the Corps is now leading this planning process. And I think this is a way for the Corps of Engineers to raise some serious questions about the lake proposals, both the One Lake project and then those other combined alternatives that I think Juan will lead us through, the alternatives D and E in the draft EIS. And so there's a lot of, I think, important questions and concerns that we have to raise on those alternatives.
What's the new colonel's name? No?
Gibson. It's Colonel Gibson is the new colonel of the Vicksburg district.
Someone ask him, ask Colonel Gibson, tell him to blink twice if he needs help. So, would you go to 2 slides over? So, section 2, one more slide. This is just a summary of the coursework. You're going to see the term array of alternatives. That just means a list of proposed plans. Next slide, please. So right here, page 2, bottom of the page, it's telling you that the Corps examined the levee board's list of proposed plans, which are alternatives A, B, C. And on top of that, it also tells you that the Corps of Engineers and the NFI developed new proposed plans, and these are going to be called A1, D, and E. Yeah, so in that same paragraph, you see the term somewhere in there that the NFI produced a study. They call it the Section 211 study. What is that? Why does it matter? I copied and pasted something else here, sorry. So you don't measure it, but what is it? Why does it matter? A study, this thing is a study commissioned by the non-federal interest, by the levee board, and written by its contractors, which includes the Pro One Lake group, which I've mentioned. It's actually described as biased by at least one technical reviewer, although a lot of the technical reviewers have comments that are interesting. Why is this important? Well, it is the basis for the DEIS. The fact that they're even looked at alternative C or created a new lake project is because this study happened. Where can you find a copy? And the answer is nowhere. This is not public. However, there is a draft from 2018 available, and you can also find the Corps of Engineers commentary. That's available online. If you want that, I'll have to give it to you afterwards for text, but I forgot to include it here. Next slide, please.
One.
This one.
Why do they say, what's the reason for it not being public?
I don't know. I have no idea. Does anyone online know that? Joe, do you have any idea what
What if I know it's in here? Well, couldn't that be, could the Freedom of Information Act, could you get that?
I think we've talked about it, but, listen, it's lazy on my part, but I'll always let Abby do all that.
We will probably try to get it.
I mean, I know that 2018 was when the levy board was in charge of the process.
But they kept going until 2022.
The process, like kind of the public engagement piece of the process closed that September
Okay.
of 2018. But the work still continued in the background. The Corps reviewed the documents. That's the technical reviewers you're referring
Yes,
to, raised
yes.
a lot of concerns about the 2018, the levy board's 2018 study. The folks that you have highlighted there were part of developing that 2018 study.
This is from the end of the 2018 study. By law, they have to show who prepared the study, and I just wanted to highlight that three of the people at the very top are actually PRVF representatives. Donna Ladd showed me a contract that the PRVF signed with the levy board back in 2011. All three names are on there. You see Mendrop Engineering appear multiple places. And over time, you'll see places like people like Watkins and Eager also come up a lot. They've, for example, Dion, whenever we went to the levy board, and that attorney came out and yelled at us,
Right.
that's the guy at the top. So he's the guy who prepared that. Yes. So next slide, please. So what happens whenever you have such a biased team creating your document? That technical review, you see statements like this. One of the reviewers says, in general, this report seems to be written to justify the preferred alternative, the one blade, instead of objectively assessing all of the alternatives. So that's almost what Ricardo was telling us he saw in the new EIS, or EIS. By the way, I do have an address if you want to see the agency technical review, tinyurl.com/2020 ATR. Next slide, please. So to summarize this, there are 6 alternatives. 3 of them were produced and studied by the levy board. 3 were created as a collaboration between the levy board and the Corps of Engineers. And a lot of that work was based on a document that we haven't seen yet, or at least not the final version, with the fingerprints of the levy board, specifically their contractors, the Pro One Lake folks. Next slide, please. And I made note, I wanted to stop for, especially whenever I have those blank slides as a summary. Perfect time for you can ask questions whenever, but yeah, those are like faucets. But if not, let's actually summarize the 3 alternatives from the levy board. Next slide, please. So that's page 3, that big middle page. It summarizes the flood risk reduction alternatives developed and examined by the levy board. All of them had BCRs, benefit cost ratio is less than 1, and that includes the one lake. So remember, less than 1 means that it's not feasible. Next slide, please. Here's just a summary of all 3 and what the Corps of Engineers said. They practically said, yeah, we agree with all the findings except the one lake. We believe that it's not feasible. Next slide, please. And to be exact, the one lake had somewhere between a 0.2 to a 0.4 benefit cost ratio. So for every dollar that the government, that the public were going to put into it, we were going to lose anywhere between 60 to 80 cents. I put where I got that data from. So I want to have a little flashback. I found this article in the Northside Sun. But yes, sir.
From a numbers perspective, just so I'm clear and everybody's clear, 1 means that we're breaking even,
Yes, sir.
no loss, no gain. But less than 1
Northside Sun, actually a very pro One Lake newspaper, October 11, 2012, had the celebratory article saying that the One Lake was going to be studied by the people who, by the people who first proposed it, John McGowan and his Pro River Mission Foundation. I don't want to take too much time to read it, although I will point out this great line by one of the levy board chairmen, who's still on the levy board. Levy board chairman Gary Rhodes doesn't believe hiring a team picked by the project's developers a conflict of interest. There we go. So I've highlighted some numbers here in red as a little bit to look back at the One Lake, this version of the One Lake and its end. So could you go to the next one? So all of these numbers are in the column pitch column. This is what they were selling us in 2011. On the right is the reality that we saw in the new DEIS. The size of the lake, they were off by almost 1,000 acres. Flood reduction, they told us it would be 95%, it was 20. Implementation cost, they told us it was 130 million. The DEIS said it would be anywhere from 1 billion to 2 billion. Completion time, they told us it would be 18 months. We're at about 140 months now. Study cost, I couldn't find the numbers, but I guarantee you it was more than 2 million. I would put money on that.
So on that, implementation costs is like the same. Oh, I see what you're doing. It would be billion.
Yeah, no, it's,
I
I wanted to
got it.
keep it with the M stuff.
Yeah.
I know no one writes billions that way, but
Yeah, no, it's okay. I just almost wanted to put a fine point on it that it is billion.
it is B, yes.
Yes.
I thought that putting 1B, 2B would look smaller than 130, so I wanted to really emphasize this.
Not
More than
without
10,000.
all of the hidden costs, right?
Right.
There's a lot more studies, the
Right.
bridges,
Yes.
the
Yes.
hazardous toxic
Yeah.
waste,
So
like all
I
of
think
those things.
those figures do include the hazardous toxic waste and the bridges, but they don't include the additional studies, which are going to be covered in a bit. So next slide, please. So summarize the levy board's 3 alternatives, A, B, and C, all didn't pass the BCR test. The One Lake in particular was a lot worse than was sold to us 10 years ago. Next slide, please. So now let's actually move on to the CORES plan. So these are the ones that are still on the table, that are still being discussed. And we're going to start with the non-structural plan. Next slide. So if you're following at home with your commander's report, page 4, top. And actually, I'm going to stop right here because I forgot to ask the folks online. How y'all feeling? Do you guys have any thoughts? Ricardo, Abby, Greta, Mr. Mullen?
Yes, I
I'm
want to
good.
make, Greta, go ahead, please.
No, I just said I was good so far. Thank you.
Yes, I wanted to comment, Juan, that in the way that both the report and the DIS are presented, we are giving a set of assumptions. And we are not giving much information about those assumptions. In this commander's report, those assumptions are not mentioned until section 10, the additional findings and considerations. And of course, I mean, while it is difficult for the layperson to go into the details of the benefit to cost ratio and about the economic benefits and all of that, I think that the normal person who lives in Jackson and has lived there for a while and suffered flooding can weigh more on whether those assumptions are valid or not. For example, one of the assumptions you would come to learn if you delve into the details or you have enough patience to last until section 10 is that the tributaries are not included in this flood risk management plan. And they provide some reasoning for that. But I think that you have the sense there, especially the people who flood more frequently, of how much the tributaries contribute to flooding of houses. No, so I think that that's an example of a very interesting assumption. And there are quite a few others on the environmental side that are very glaring. No, for example, they decide, even though they recognize, you learn in section 10, that they do not, that is, the people putting together the DIS, do not understand how the Pearl River watershed functions. They go ahead and continue telling us what they tell us. That is after telling us, we do not understand how the Pearl River functions. We should do a study to be able to understand how it functions. But although we do not understand, let me tell you what we are going to need to do. That's a very interesting assumption to make, isn't it? So that's it.
Where Ricardo's talking about, this report, later on in the back, it recommends that there be a watershed study, a study of the whole river, maybe all the way from the Neshoba down to St. Tammany's Parish. Because it turns out we don't know how the river functions. We have a lot of gaps in our knowledge. So I think to Ricardo's point is, the Corps of Engineers is both willing to say it doesn't know what's going on, but also make statements, definitive statements about whether or not the lake is going to be a good idea. Thank you, Ricardo. Hey, Scott.
Thank you, Ricardo. This is Scott Crawford. I really appreciate your comment, and that's what raises my anxiety level as I read this report. As a layperson, without a background in hydrology or hydrologic geomorphology, is that the right word?
Geomorphology, alluvial geomorphology.
Fluvial geomorphology. My goodness, I am not an expert, okay? So these assumptions that are being made, we here in Jackson are not in a position to question those because we don't have that background. But those assumptions, in science, you're always making assumptions, always. And those assumptions matter to our models. And therefore, it raises a lot of questions. We've simply got to trust that there's an unbiased expert who is making conservative assumptions that are based in science and are defensible and are going to protect the citizens of Jackson first. That's got to be our priority, protect the people of Jackson and secondarily the environment. And of course, there's all kinds of scientific assumptions being made about environmental impacts. And that, again, raises concern on my part because I'm not an environmental expert and I don't understand all the terms that they're using in this report. That's all I've got. Thanks.
So guys, thank you, Scott. Non-alternative plan, page 4, section 4, top of the page. It introduces a new alternative called Alternative A1, and the idea is they find out who's at risk of flooding, 4% chance annually. And they say we can buy out, elevate, or flood-proof those structures. And actually, I don't know if they include a buyout in this one, but the idea is they find all of those high-risk areas and above and elevate them, or flood-proof. Participation is voluntary. I want to highlight that because I know for a while we've talked about the potential of things like eminent domain. Voluntary is repeated often. This section also introduces a levy for Canton Club, which I think is an incredible, simple step. I know we have a lot of things on. So Mindy would be living on the other side of the creek from the levee, and so that poses this threat. Isn't the water just going to come to me more now? Yes.
This would have no other way to go.
I understand. Yeah. lay out my cards on the table, I think that the next step is to now have a levee on your side of the creek too. And,
Have one on each side?
like, yeah, essentially, next slide, please. In the same way that it hugs around Camping Club, to hug around Parkway also. I'm not certain what else to do, but like that would be
You mean south?
my
or-
layman's. I mean, I guess I call it your area of Parkway as the.
Oh, I
neighborhood.
see what you're saying.
Yeah,
You're
yes.
just referring to it,
Big area.
the area, but it would be on both sides of Crooked Creek.
Yes, I would also like to say as it relates to that, I found it very interesting, that in the reading of the plans, there was no mention of the Parkway or the McLeod communities as far as,
Zero, yeah.
prevention of, for the flooding. And, the levy does not, take that into consideration as it identifies Canyon Club.
Yeah, I have my conspiracy theories on why it's set up, but we won't go there right now. This one?
So how would, so what we're doing here is trying to modify this, or how would this go about?
It's,
Because I know what's gonna happen to my house if that takes place.
that's a good question on like, what are we trying to do as a group? Or,
To a plan that hasn't one. How would we even go about?
I mean, I think the issue is, as you're pointing out, and as Carl is pointing out, is that this concept is a good start. It's a start.
Right.
It needs to be expanded to include your community or your neighborhood, you know, and other, you know, 3C1CA neighborhoods that aren't part of this. So it's like, hey, this is great, but like, we need to build on this.
Well, when I'm looking at this levee, everything on the outer edge of that orange to the right, there are no houses. But on the bottom, you've got all those houses down there, and the water's coming from in the lower right-hand side, and all that area below the bottom orange line is going to flood twice as much, or maybe 4 times as much as we are now.
But as Warren said, about the assessment piece, from here all the way down to the, you see, this is something that's gonna have to be, looking at this here, this is something that's gonna have to be assessed as well, and like Gil said, it's a start. And remember, the intent thing, when we talked about this here, this, One Lake project and all of this other stuff, it was a comprehensive plan that was gonna be a flood control thing, so that's what we have to really go back to, we have to include everybody, we're not gonna just say, fix, Canyon Club and let you flood and everybody else, even the ones that are downstream, it's not gonna be that way. This is gonna be a comprehensive piece, and I'm glad Corps Engineer, like, Ricardo said, were responsible enough to let us know that, hey, you know, we don't have all the answers, we're still assessing this here, and this is what's at hand, but see, here's the thing, the levy board didn't get what they want. And I'm kinda glad that they did.
well, they might be, we'll see that in a second.
But Warren,
Hey,
also, I've only been intentionally a part of this for a little over a year, or about a year. But during that time, was the Canyon Club not mentioned in some documents years ago? And maybe that's why Canyon Club was considered versus, at that time, naturally, we had no organization as far as the 3 communities in order to label them by name, or, and years ago, my community was called Colonial Heights versus Parkway. So when you start thinking about information like that, maybe it's an oversight based on a name that was used before versus now we can include names that need to be included in the whole process. Does our responses have the opportunity to reflect on that?
I guess I'm a little confused about the question, I'm sorry.
So I'm just saying that in some documentations I've been reading or have been mentioned before, Canyon Club was mentioned
Yes.
by somebody some years ago. And so now as they move forward, Canyon Club has its voice or ear, or that name has been referred to.
Okay.
And now, does our response give a chance to include and implement all three of these communities, of which previously they may not have had their own name or identity.
So I think you might be referring, there was one comment in the public scoping comment period from the neighborhood association president asking for a levy like this. I don't know if that had anything to do with it. Not to get too much in the weeds, but I think the Corps included this in their non-structural plan so that it could then be part of the CTO plan. Does that make any sense to you, Joe?
I think, there's probably some truth in between what you guys are saying. So, I mean, when I refer to, like, in my one pager, I call it the Canton Club neighborhood levy, because I think of it as a broader, because I think people are using the term Canton Club, but as you say, Carl, like, now is the time, or, ma'am, I'm sorry your name, but
Mindy.
Miss Mindy, now is the time to say, hey, like, it's A1, that's great, but you need to include these other things. There's things critically missing for neighborhoods and the tributary should be included in this plan too. So it's really, I think, making sure we have a common voice to say, hey, we need to have everyone, as I think Dion speaks so well to, part of the solution. It can't just be piecemeal here, there, and everywhere. It needs to benefit everybody, as people who are flooding, who are experiencing chronic flooding.
To answer what Carl was saying, like you said, there's some truth to it, because you remember when the flooding started and when this whole thing just came out, what was at hand was just Northeast Jackson neighborhood, and when we came in the cab, this is when all of the communities, came together, because even the neighborhood, let's just keep things in perspective, even the neighborhood president associations were not keen on dividing Canton Club, Colonia Heights at that time, and Parkway and all that. It was just a neighborhood that was there, and they had anything to do with this. And all of a sudden, when the cab comes up, and we started having these meetings now, our neighborhood president has just recently spoken to us about flooding issues, and not let alone the flash flooding, Pearl River flooding, and they were just like not even there. The flood of 20, they were nowhere to be found. But all of a sudden, when we came together and we found out that there were 3 communities here involved, and we identified these communities. Because at one time we thought there were 4, but there were actually only 3. And so we identified each of these communities, and now these communities have a voice, and we have come together, and this is where we are now. And we must be mindful to thank Warren and MCUP for what they have done. They've given us this platform. They've brought us the resources that we need, and we have come out in growth, and we are trying to still inform people and let people know exactly what's going on. And we have to thank the entities like Pearl River, Audubon, and all of those that have come together. True enough, everybody has their own agenda or what have you, but at this one particular time, we are here for this flood risk management, and we are here to make sure that the environmental impact is taken care of, and that it's not, it doesn't destroy anything, because people like the levy board and these other people, they don't care. These big corporations, all they want is just money, and that's not what's going to happen. We have a voice, and we're going to talk, we're going to show them, and we're going to group ourselves, and we're going to go forth with this and doing what's going to be best for this community. Simplicity, as Money said, is a key term here. I mean, this area can be taken back. Now, notice how we've come back now to a levy for Canton Club. That little section that's from the Canton Club north, where those homes are all the way down, that section could have been bridged a long time ago. It could have been bridged 30, 40 some years ago. And that if a levee was there, that levee would have been soundproof now. Levees will fail at times, but just like the spillway, for instance. Now, we know they enhanced up on it. They did things, to make sure that it's strong and broader, because they had them. When the flood of 79 and these other floods that have recently come, that levee would have washed away, and Jackson and everything down south would have been gone. So we have to think in terms of things like this, and we have to really look, and we have to see, and doing keen assessments will get us all the information that we need, and we've got to sit together, all of us.
So guys, we'll let's keep moving, because I think that there's going to be a lot of things to talk about. Although I do want to say, to the point, something that we've started to talk about now is actions. There's still so much like a need to figure out, how we want to act together. And so what we're doing right now is we're still trying to make sure that we understand all of the pieces that are being thrown out there. This is a lot of studies, a lot of information, and so we're still digesting, so to speak.
Can I ask one quick question? In that, analysis there, where the 4% flood event, it gives 143, with 81 residential, 62. So how would you find out if I would?
I'll show them in a second.
Okay.
Yeah, but I did want to throw a little aside here, sidebar question that was asked by Scott was, like, how is this considered non-structural if you're literally, pouring concrete, elevating homes, floodproofing? You're doing, you're modifying structures. So this is not an official definition, but I do believe it's accurate here. Non-structural plans are those plans that don't make any physical changes to the natural environment. They don't change how floods behave, they don't change the floodplain. Because homes and businesses already develop things, they can be modified and the plan will still be considered non-structural because you're not changing any structures in the natural environment. Larry, you're looking at me, that face.
John, my question is, I know for us being residential people,
Yeah.
we already know that I already tried to call Chuck Way and Hondo is on. They ain't picking the phone, but they more concerned with the water problem. How much damage the last flood were done to businesses? Because it looks like if we can cater to the businesses as more of the threat that's happening with the plans we're trying to propose, maybe we can get more people involved that have more money and a bigger voice. Because apparently the city is not paying attention to us regular people. I think they're more concerned with the business and the money that's coming in the city than what we bring to it.
As a group, we've talked about having stronger ties with businesses, and quite frankly, I mean, like, at least on my end, I haven't made an effort. It's not a good thing, I'm just, I haven't made the time to do that.
Okay.
I don't think the ratio of businesses is great, it's residential.
But, yeah,
I mean,
It probably is minute.
We have a municipal election next year. We vote, and if we're paying attention and we speak out, they will have to listen if they want to keep their jobs. Full stop.
I know last time we flooded, that school, the private school, Jackson Academy. Do we know anybody that goes to Jackson Academy that we can try to get involved with? Because I'm sure they lost a lot of money when they flooded just like we did.
do you guys, I want to make a proposition here. I have everyone's contact information. Because, if you haven't signed in, please do. I want to send out an email, and Larry, you and I have been in conversation for a while. I want to send out an email because we have an interest in taking action, right? Right now, our actions are very oriented towards, so to speak, being specialists in the project, but we also need that, so to speak, a larger base, a larger voice. And so I do want to, the reason I'm saying this is because I'm not sure if we're ready to take action right now, and I do want to present some more things, but this is a conversation we are having. Just and I've been trying to get you to more meetings anyway. I know you work at night, don't you?
I'm pretty much on call 24, each year.
I also need to be better about staying in touch with people there. But could you hit the next slide, please? So, well, before you do, guys, I always wondered what do elevated homes look like. Right here, this is from a company in Houston. You see a little before and after. I wanted to just show homes with like slab elevation to show you that it can be done. Okay?
Just real quickly, that's all a great idea for some people, right? Some people. There's a limitation though.
Elderly do not want to
Right.
go upstairs.
Anyone with a mobility impairment need not apply to any of those solutions. Right. The minute you break your ankle, that's not doable. The minute you get a bad knee, that's not doable. The minute you're a wheelchair user, that's not usable. Just saying.
Or all.
Right.
Carl, if I might, if I might say a word here. Let's see, as a comment to the last commenter, I think that your name is Carl, there are ways to make these adaptations or these elevations of house ADA compliant. And these days, most of them imply putting an elevator so that to make the access to the additional height of the house accessible to you.
Ricardo, how do you make
Yes,
elevators waterproof?
you do it by putting the motor upstairs, not downstairs. So the elevator is lifted from above, not pushed up from below. So the motor is not exposed to water, and then you make the shaft of the elevator to be water resistant as well. So it's doable, and it is done frequently now in that kind of projects. The other comment that I wanted to make is that another layer, an element that is very present by its absence is the one that you vote on, that you might be voting on next year, if you are voting for any local officials. I do not know whether the Navy board members are voted in by public vote or not. But if you look at that slide with the Canton Park and the other neighborhoods, a question that we don't ask because it's so evident is, why are those houses there in the floodplain? The fact that there was a floodplain there was known since at least 1968, when the floodplain, the initial floodplain models were developed. And the reason why those houses are there is because the developer received a permit to establish a neighborhood there, to build houses and to bring in electricity and water, and then individual houses received a permit to be built there. And permit to be built there in the way that they were built. We even know of some houses that are being built there now as we speak, that do not comply with the obligations of those people that issue permits for house buildings to make them safe for inhabitants. And safe means that the connection to the drinking water is right, that the electricity connection is safe, but also that they are going to be protected from flooding if a flooding happens. So I would love to see you guys figuring out a way to bring local government into this conversation, because they are very present here by their lack of action. That's it.
How much would it cost if you know, the cost variance, the cost of making a levy versus the cost of trying to raise the houses? What's the cost factor there? What's the pros and cons?
I don't know. I do think that I try to do that like by hand, and so it's at $10 million for 250 homes for Canton Club levy. It comes out to be, God, I can't do that math in my head, like 40,000 a home, which is, I believe elevations are a lot more expensive. So in some cases, yes, levies are less expensive. They carry their own unique set of risks. But I am not any sort of expert on that.
And can we make some kind of plan where we can make I know in some states, they have levies, but they turn it to like Parkway to Broadway.
Yeah.
My wife is from Liverpool. They have a big giant left, and they got it as a big walkway and recreational area. Is there something you can do like that, might not be, might be a little bit, like a couple more $1 million? That we can-
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great idea, absolutely. I know exactly what you're talking about. I've been on that, like in New Orleans, on the West Bank, you can
Where,
walk
where,
away.
where my wife from,
Yeah.
they got like a whole ball around that thing, like literally, and like family area, it's a concert area, it's all like around that big giant left. It's a big wide.
So, Larry, like I said, you need to be part of the conversation, prepare for action items, things, but, guys, this slide, I just want to give you some information here that these non-structural ideas, they're included because they have to, by law. That's the law right there. Next slide. So, this section introduced the non-structural plan, alternative A1, elevate homes, and it also introduced the levy system. Next slide. So, guys, I wanna share a little story here called. This is not part of the report, but I promise you, it's part of the DEIS and this whole story about flood control. I'm titling the story "What Happened to Alternative A1." Next slide, please. So for this story, I'm gonna refer to old A1 and new A1. So back in December of last year, we got to see some internal documents from Corps of Engineers. And that's actually when the public first saw that there was a new non-structural alternative. Again, I'm gonna call it old A1. It said that it was this plan that had a benefit cost ratio of 2.7. So every dollar you put into it, you got $2.70 back. It also showed that the one lake was a bad thing, right? So the attorney for the levy went on, on TV or whatever, said he was very upset. These documents came out, whatever. But it was 600 structures for $200 million. Now, several months passed, over 6, and we got the final report. And so let's compare old A1 to new A1. The old one was 600 structures, the new one 143. The first one cost $200 million, the new one cost $50. The benefit cost ratio was 2.7, and now it's 2.2. What happened? Why did this thing become less attractive, smaller footprint, so on and so on? Next slide. So this is actually from the main report, the EIS. If you happen to go to page 135, you see this, and I have some definitions on the side of this as a reminder. So it said preliminary economic analysis identified alternative 1 as the potential LED plan. Remember, that means it's got the greatest BC volume. However, once controlling for the effects of headwater flooding on tributaries, the net benefits of the non-structural plan drop, so on and so on. So, what do they mean by controlling for the effects of headwater flooding on tributaries? They're controlling for flash flooding. They're no longer considering flash flooding. Now, you can see other, so to speak, vestiges of removing flash flooding from the plan in other parts of the report. Could you hit that next slide, please? But let me just show you real quick what was removed. So on the right are all the structures in alternative A1. So that's maybe to your question. These are the ones that have a 4% chance or greater of flooding. I want to be clear with you. This is your area, none of the structures are there. There's another map which shows that you guys are considered somewhere between 2 and 4%, so you guys didn't make the cut. Now, what was cut out was everything around here. All the stuff that went into West Jackson. So this is Ledge Creek, this is Jackson State University, this is downtown Jackson. All of that stuff was removed from old A1. This is the only stuff that remained. Tributary headwater, that's flash flooding. Tributary backwater is just water that's backed up from the river. So that's river flooding.
So these new, 4%,
Yeah.
that would be after the levy?
Good question. Is it after the I don't think so. But I also just don't.
But wouldn't that make some areas
That
a
could
greater
that-
percentage?
I think that's a very good point. Do they do those after, yes, that's a great point. Listen,
Juan,
hey, we got Ricardo right here. Yes, sir. Wait, hey, Ricardo, can you
uh,
let me show one more thing? One more thing to that went with the last page.
okay.
Yeah, so next slide. So I showed you a quote from the DEIS, which said that they cut out the tributaries from Alternative 81. There's also, so we're going to talk in a little bit, although I know a lot of time has passed, but you know, there's these new lake plans. They're called the CTO combination thereof. If you happen to meander over to page 93 of the new report, it talks about how they considered cleaning out and maintaining the tributaries as part of the new plans. However, this feature was removed from further consideration in the CTO, the combination thereof plan. Upon identifying that this work was being undertaken by the National Resources Conservation Center, by the state, and other local entities through Mississippi watershed projects. So effectively, they are no longer considering flash flooding because it is somebody else's problem.
Would that be the city?
Yes.
Yes, for Scotts Creek, it's a city project. They're referring to.
I'm sorry, I have absolutely zero confidence in this. Zero.
Now, Ricardo, I just wanted to get through this slide because it's another sort of statement in the DEIS which shows why they cut out the tributaries. But Ricardo?
No, but I think that you guys are seeing things that are important and kind of evident if you read all the report with close attention. You can find what kind of projects they refer here as the NRCS, state, and other local entities undertaking. If you go to the main report, page 14, table 1.1, and you see what are the reports. They are characterized there as stream bank stabilization projects. So this is to prevent the stream bank from being eroded and carried away. But the stream bank stabilization, by definition, doesn't change the flooding characteristics of the stream, in this case of the tributaries, at all. The purpose is not to prevent flooding, is to stabilize the stream bank. Therefore, by the meager evidence that they present of what work is being done, it is not true what they say. Furthermore, this is in the context also of them having said that they do not understand how the Purple River works. And the tributaries of any river are part of the river. You cannot understand how the river works without the tributaries. Another kind of general comment. Here, the Army Corps of Engineers was told by Congress, was told by your representatives, that using your money, tax money, that they should put together a flood risk management program that maximize the flood risk prevention in your communities. And what we have been doing here is discussing the non-federal interest project and how it compares with some alternatives that the Corps put together. Why is the first option to consider the non-federal interest, that is the One Lake Plan? I don't understand whether the Corps was bound in any way by legal language that they had to consider the One Lake Plan. But I would tell you that maybe this is an opportunity for you to demand that a plan for the community is developed, not for the One Lake Plan, but for the community, sponsored by you, voters of Jackson and Rankin counties and Hyde counties. That's it. But you are seeing things that are evident and important.
Yeah, this all goes back to that action scene, but I saw some people leaning in your description of the projects. So just to repeat, in case someone didn't catch that, was the projects that they're referring to, a lot of them are just to stabilize the banks. They're not actually flood control projects. Or flood risk reduction projects. Could you go to the next slide, please? So guys, summary, story of alternative A1. There was once a great alternative A1 that was skinny by removing about 450 structures at about $150 million, and A1 became less attractive, less advantageous, best benefit cost analysis, and it's because these were all creek flooding, and somebody else is taking care of that, according to the report. Which I...
We're laughing. We are laughing, but it's not funny.
No, I know. I'm sorry, Scott.
Yeah.
Could you go to the next slide, please? So guys, I'm actually going to skip around a little bit here. Alternative A1, I think, is really important in that it might actually be the plan with the greatest benefit cost ratio, the AEP plan. But I do want to get to the new lake plan, so let me close off alternative 1 here. What are some advantages and risks of the project? So on page 4, section 4, section 6A summarizes an advantage and several risks of alternative A1. The advantage is that unlike any of the other alternatives, the old one lake, the new one lake, alternative E, which is get to go love, alternative A1 can be executed immediately. Those are, I believe, the kernels for it, immediately. However, there's some risk that he points out. There's a possibility that there will be low participation. Remember, it's voluntary. In part because there's a belief that some eligible property owners, it's not just a belief, it's a fact that some will not be able to afford ineligible cost. There's a caveat to that I'll get to in 2 slides, but because you won't change how flooding behaves. The street floods, there's still flood, which means that you'll still have that type of flooding. And also, you will still very likely have to evacuate in certain cases. These aren't what I'm saying, this is what he says. But would you hit the next slide, because I want to show you an eligible cost. I don't want to read through these. I do want to let you know that the EIS talks about what actually, what does the government not have to pay for? There's a whole list of things, so that puts the burden on the homeowner. And I can understand with some of them, like, I'm not sure if I want to elevate somebody's hot tub or pool or spa, etc. But there's some that are more synthetic. Oh, well, I can't even say that word right now. This thing's made me lose all sympathy. Things like cleaning out asbestos, it's up to the homeowners. There's cost. Actually, I'm going to give you guys a little time to read this. Jill had her hand up.
I was just gonna make the comment, I was just gonna make the comment that, the community report actually identifies some potential programs or other opportunities to help support homeowners in this situation. In fact, for example, on the coast of Mississippi, there's a program that's been established to help defray costs for homeowners. So we should take this in stride. I think it's important to acknowledge that there may be some costs to homeowners, etc., but that there are solutions to help address some of the concerns. So, it's part of, I think, the bias that we see throughout the draft study against the alternative A1, which should be A1 plus. But this is, I think, one part of the conversation. But there's some solutions that are put on the table actually by the commander's report to address this. So let's make sure they're built into the study.
Scott?
The second to the last bullet point, I'm going to read it out loud. Costs associated with special access improvements, aside from those covered by the Americans with Disabilities Act, that are not deemed eligible, are not being covered. Now, here's the rub. The Americans with Disabilities Act, sadly, does not cover single-family homes. It does not. Nothing in the ADA says a single house has to be accessible. I think that was a colossal mistake, but hey, I didn't write the law.
So for your home, it wouldn't be eligible?
Right. I don't think so. And the other stipulation, let's say, for the sake of argument, we could raise my house, which would be fine, but you would need an elevator that was absolutely flood-proof. And it would have to have backup electricity that could never, ever fail. Or the resident's life is in danger. Just saying.
You'd have to have a generator.
A generator that could never fail. Or your life's in danger.
And reading that, I also gathered that if you had a detached garage or an outbuilding, that would be eligible either.
I think you're right, yeah. Well, but I do want to point out something Jill said. Would you go to the next slide, please? So that's what section 9B is about. That's page 10. The commander actually recommends measures such as developing financial assistance program to help owners cover ineligible costs. As Jill mentioned, that there are programs out there, and you referenced some programs in the code. So part of, I believe what Jill is noting is that there is a strong interest by the levy board to make this look unappealing. They probably are going to go out of their way not to make anything like this because they don't want people participating. So Joe, I did not forget to include this.
And Ricardo's have additional.
Yes.
insight.
So let me just make sure I cover everything on this. Next slide, please, on this section. So I did want to raise a question that I think kind of goes into, we're talking about these additional levies besides Canton Club levy. So A1 can be implemented immediately. How about alternative A1 with a Canton Club levy? That's not mentioned anywhere about implementation details. But I'm curious because that would be a real draw. And if that's the case, would you also be able to implement Canton Club levy, a Parkway levy, and a Cobb levy much faster than what we're going to do if we go with the new one levy? But next slide, please. I wanna just go back over this. There are risks, and those are things like you will still have to evacuate. There'll have to be a long fight over how to cover cost, because by law, the levy board is not required to cover them. But I did want to give space to Ricardo up here. Ricardo? And I actually also want to give everyone space here in that we're somewhere past halfway. I know that we still have the one late, but it is noon, so I wanted to just check the temperature with everyone. Tamita is actually giving water, which so I always say Tamita asked the tough questions on things like the chat. You know that there's no Purple Creek and coverage in that meeting. So I hate that you're hiding right now. Okay. You guys, let's keep rolling then. Next slide. All right, guys. So the combination there are plans in the course one lake. It's just the thing we've been waiting for, right? The new one lake project.
So one, your last question. In our response, will we have the opportunity to suggest
Yes.
such things like that particular
Absolutely.
statement, as well as some things that Money has discussed with
Yes.
us? We will have an opportunity.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
In fact, I'm encouraging money to make up, if they allow public statements, to make one about, both those cutoffs and the levies. Next slide, please. So guys, page 4, section 5, page 4. It introduces alternative B, which is a smaller version of the one lake. There's less digging, less filling in of wetlands, there's a smaller dam, and it includes that levee for Canton Club, which was died in the old One Lake plan. It also includes levees for the wastewater treatment plant, which those two last things are independent of the lake, but it's just part of alternative B. Alternative E is everything that Alt B has except the dam, so it would be the zero lake project. Next slide, please. So there's a need to focus on alternative B. Why? So here's a picture of the levee boards. Attorney put out a press release last week, 2 weeks ago. It finishes with the statement, the Rankin Hines Pearl River Flood Drainage Control District, and its board member, the Rankin Hines Pearl River Flood Control and Drainage District, and its board members fully support alternative B as the selected plan for the Pearl River Basin Federal Flood Risk Management Project. So they've come out. I think this is now the new LPP, the new local preferred plan. They say, yeah, that's good. That's what we meant the whole time. That's what we meant when we said all of these things about the Great Lake. So this is the lake. This is the one lake. I'll call it the coarse one lake or the new one lake. But this is it now. So next slide, please. So just to kind of help you understand what is this project, I want to just give you its most basic elements. First, they're going to go in and dig out all of the stuff that has the pink, like that area that's got the pink hashes on it, dashes. That's going to be excavated. That's what sometimes they call, in the report, Colonel Klein describes it as widening the cross-section of the river, making it bigger. All of the material they dig out is going to be dumped in the brown areas. Then they're going to construct a new dam, sort of like near Interstate 20, and so all of the space they dug out is going to fill up, and the water is going to be elevated by several feet all the way up to the reservoir. That's that blue, dark blue region, the lake. On top of that, alternative B is going to have, they're going to upgrade the levees at the wastewater treatment plant, bottom left corner. And they're going to have the Canton Club levee, which is not pictured, but you guys saw it a couple of pages back. And it actually includes some buyouts and elevations and some flood proofings, which we'll be mentioning again in just a minute. Now, I also, maybe it's a good time to point out, if you guys are following the commander's report, sort of in line with what Ricardo said, in that there's this element of really trying to push forward this plan as the best one. There's also some euphemisms that happen here. So you guys can probably guess why people want their land filled. Because right now it floods, if they put dirt on it, they elevate it, they can now build on it. They call the Corps of Engineers and the levee board call that the Federal Levee Improvement Plan. But take a look, so I've included all of the levees in the region, for most of them. Where the brown stuff is, sure, some areas are going to have fill, but a lot of the places won't. So calling it the levee improvement plans is, I can't say it in church, but it's false. Right? It's a
I like the term, Juan.
Yes. I was having a hard time remembering a better word for it. So really, it's just the excavated material.
Misnomer.
Yeah. So I wanted to make sure to give you guys an idea of what the lake is. Next slide, please. I think I have one picture with it, with the old one, just to give you a tip. Hey, Albert, next slide. So on the left is the old one lake, alternative C. On the right is alternative D. Don, as you take pictures, I also have these online that you can download them. slide, please. Now, I want to highlight in his description, Colonel Klein mentions clearing and expanding a cross-sectional area of the river channel corridor to increase hydraulic conveyance. So this is the most technical slide I'll have. Mindy, don't give up on me. I'm going to be quick on this one.
No, that's not one.
Yeah.
So you're gonna dig where there's water pipes?
Oh, I'm not gonna, I have no idea anything about that. So, the idea is, they're going to make the river bigger, which increases the river's quote-unquote efficiency, so it can move more water at lower flood heights. This is a thing that people do for, like river engineering. I wanna note this, that there's a trade-off, and that's gonna come up later, at least some of it. If you make the river more efficient, and if it flows faster because of it, you're going to create new stresses on your existing infrastructure. So you've heard things about bridges. If your river flows faster, your bridges are going to have more stress on them. Also, if you're shoving water quickly through the city, well, it's going to pile up somewhere else. So you actually create what's called induced flooding, create more flooding downstream of the project. And that's actually something that this project will create. And we'll see in a second. So could you hit that next slide, please? So just some FAQs kind of thing. Why is this new lake less expensive than the other one? Less excavation, smaller dam, lower mitigation costs. You're breaking less things or having to pay for these days. Colonel Klein mentions that this could be likely the NED plan. This means that, again, greatest benefit cost ratio. What's up with alternative E? Again, it's the district came out in support of E, so I'm not going to talk about E too much. But I do want to highlight that it has environmental destructive factors, like all that excavation, and you're still giving people free soil so they can develop. But because you don't construct a dam, it is less destructive. And why exclude the dam? I want to highlight something important here that always needs to be said. The dam that the levee board wants to build does not actually provide flood risk reduction benefits. You can see Colonel Klein mentioned that on page 6. You see that mentioned in the PIs multiple times. You see the Corps of Engineers reviewers mention that. The dam is not necessary for flood control. It's necessary to make a lake, which is great for business, but it's not a flood control element. I believe this is it for the section. And so I want to take that second to site mitigation costs. Just as a reminder, if you break it, you buy it. The old plan was unfeasible because of mitigation costs. Anytime you have a plan that creates harmful consequences, impacts, which a lot of plans do, even good ones, you have to pay for it. And that's a mitigation cost. So you'll see that term come up in core meetings, mitigation costs, whether it's because you destroyed natural habitat for turtles, sturgeon, and type of fish, or because you're flooding someone downstream. Those require treatment. Next slide, please. So guys, there's a new one lake plan. It's alternative D. It's smaller. Yes, it's less destructive, but it carries a lot of the same problems. And you spend a lot of money doing things like building a dam. That's just for recreation, not for fun. Ricardo, do you have any thoughts?
I am only going to point out that what the Corp has done with the alternative D is improve the One Lake plan or the old One Lake plan. And they have done this by spending your money, the congressional authorized money, instead of producing a plan that really maximizes flood risk management. Other than that, I think that you have it very good, Juan.
Thank you, Ricardo. Would you hit that next slide, please? All right, so challenges to implementing alternative D. So this new One Lake plan that the levee board's behind, that you don't probably have to look far in Facebook to see people, ecstatic some challenges to implementing it? Next slide, please. So page 5, section 6. It actually, Colonel Klein talks about how, well, he doesn't say this exactly, but he tells us, or maybe he doesn't, the project, alternative D, exceeds the congressional authorization limit. So the limit is about $370 million. And you can actually go over that limit. If you create a plan that goes over what Congress said you can have, there's a limit above that. It's called the 902 limit, and that's 420 million. So right here at the bottom, I have low and high. That's the low end estimate for the new one rate. On the right is the high end estimate. And then in orange, I have how much it's over the limit, right? So the low end, which I'll just mention the low end estimates. It's about the project limit by $135 million. It's above the high end limit by $65 million. So that right there is already a problem. It's more money than Uncle Sam said. Next slide. There's also going to be our favorite more analysis required. That's page 5 towards the bottom, and it goes into the next page. Can you hit that space bar, or next slide, please? So I have here just, this is not a comprehensive list of the new analysis that you would need, but if you look at these pages, like section 8, page 8, actually it's mostly section 8, you see constant mentioning of how you have to have more studies. And some of these studies are actually specifically just to make sure that the dam, which doesn't serve any flood control purposes, isn't going to be harmful to, for example, our drinking water supply. Right? Because it actually may change the chemistry of the water, and so the drinking water plant would need some sort of modification. I think I heard a microphone on the folks online. Did someone want to step in? So what else is required? The Congress will have to act. He says that, I think it's page 5 and 6. He mentions that they will either have to increase the cost limit, so new legislation to increase the cost limit, or he actually suggests what he calls authorizing something like I think he calls it a programmatic authority. So this is my best interpretation. He's saying that Congress could authorize small-scale programs project programs. So the U.S. Congress would have to make a new program where people like the levy board can do things piecemeal and apply for a new levy, apply for a different levy, apply for this and that, do things piecemeal. So those are his recommendations. Right, so it's not just new studies, it's literally an act of Congress that would be needed for all. Would you hit that next slide, please? So what are the challenges? More studies and a need to move Congress to implement the new one way. You guys have any questions, thoughts, ideas? Good luck. Yeah.
So were there any arguments about why they have to include the dam beyond
Yes.
development? If it,
Oh,
That's a
no,
little
just literally for, they said it would be for recreation. It would provide more recreational opportunities.
recreational, and the, and
Oh.
the idea that that would tie back to, on the Corps' end, on the federal end, does that tie back to fulfilling any
No.
kinds of development, the
No.
national development, the
Oh,
priorities?
for that, so that for that calculation, the NED benefits?
Yeah.
Yes, so whenever they talk about alternative E and D, E is the one without the dam. They say that the total benefits of the one with the dam are gonna be a little higher. And they state that it's for, specifically because of recreation. We can't go into details because the new DEIS does not include an economics analysis. So there's no way for us to go in and like Ricardo said, find the devil in the details. But I do want to note something that this is interesting, I think. You hear the Great City Foundation, another organization that promotes the lake. They've started to talk about how this new lake will provide a new water source for a future water plant for Jackson. And Abby Brayman a couple of months ago sent me a list of congressional direct spending items that Roger Wicker is asking for. And he's asking for a $2.5 million study. He wants to give the levy board $2.5 million to study drinking water supply. So that's probably all an attempt to prove that this lake is necessary for a new water station. So that's a lot of details, guys. But it's a lot of interesting. So back to the basics, though. Flood reduction.
One comment.
Yes, please. Yes.
You pointed out how the Lake E was found to be not the NED plan, the best economic development plan, because of differences in the recreational uses of the lake. The lake providing more recreational uses, which is more economic development. You haven't mentioned it, but let me mention it, that your group, Mississippi Citizens United for Prosperity, is working on the development of a park on the east side of Canton Club. And let me point out also that there is very little access to the river floodplain in the Jackson metropolitan area. Recreational benefits do not depend only in being able to go to the water and put your boat in the water. You can go to Atlanta, for example, and you'll see what recreational benefits in the floodplain the city is developing there. You set up parks, you set up bikeways, you set up kayak access points, you set up educational stations, etc., etc. So I think that that's another way that they are trying to hide a falsehood, that there can be no economic benefits without lakes. The thing is that Jackson local government, including the levee board and the water control district, they have not worked in developing those recreational access to the river. But there can be recreational benefits from an alternative A1 or for an alternative E. That's it.
No, you're 100% correct. That agency technical review, the board, the local levee board engineer says that the levees cut off access to the river, which is ironic because it's actually a super popular running spot. But the levee board actually does have gates that are, say no trespassing. And no, I agree. It's not true. It's dishonest, but.
Can I comment on that one?
Say that again?
I would just like to mention that along the lines of what Ricardo was saying and the work that MCUP's been doing to develop the idea for a park plan along the river, there is 740 acres actually of unutilized City of Jackson property that could be used for recreational development. If the Corps wants to pay for us to have recreation, then they could do it with any of the plans.
Didn't they just, aren't they doing another park area near,
Where do you guys live?
yeah,
Yeah, that's what Ricardo mentioned, so that's something that we've been working on. Two more section, guys, we're almost there, flood reduction benefits. I'll keep this one, short and sweet. Next slide? Yes, thank you. I just wanted to point out, I really wanted to point out that Colonel Klein made a mistake in what he said here on page 5, section 6. He's supposed to be helping the Secretary of the Army make a decision. So I don't know how much time I spent reading this over and over. Something that didn't seem right. So when he talks about annual flood damage reductions of 27.7, That's actually just overall benefits. That's important here because remember, flood damage reductions is the core element of what the Corps is looking for. And benefits are more general because that includes recreation. For example, Alex Rogier with the City Today made this mistake on his press release and cited him for correction, and now that news article was corrected not to mistake conflate benefits for annual reductions. So next slide, please. Just, I was being picky, but I care about this, and I wanted to just say, what I wanted to point out is alternative D and E are supposed to have the same flood damage reductions. There's a statement of DIS which says that. At high flows, the water levels for the CTO without the weir are assumed to be the same, and the flood protection benefits can be taken directly from the CTO with the weir analysis. Next slide. So I wanted to summarize the flood reduction benefits. These are not listed. The Corps does a poor job at calculating important information, so I just calculated it myself. And I include Old A1. I show the spot for A1 plus Canton Club levies. They have no information that I found on the flood risk reduction. I might miss it. But Old A1, overall damage reduction, 45% at a cost of $2 million. Alternative B, the new one leg, 50% at $500 million. So it's very similar to Old A1 in terms of how much money the people would save on flood damages. Only B is over twice as much cost-wise, similar to B. So I just wanted to summarize these right here. Next slide, please. Which houses are included in alternative A1 as it stands? Horrible map now that I look at it is flooding, but there's little red triangles which show where they want to elevate homes. The 3 communities are not included in the plan, again, just because they say that your risks are not high enough for the properties. Next slide. These are the structures benefiting, and there's a little caveat I want to mention. When benefiting is a little bit of a misnomer on one end, but because you've increased the hydraulic conveyance, the water flows faster, and because you've built levees in Canton Club, a lot of the neighborhood, if not all, will be, the risk of flooding will be less than 1% annually, at least from the river. I've mentioned the study differentiates between river flooding and tributary flooding. I want to be careful and not tell you that it's from both. I actually forgot to look back for this map. You guys are in the top left corner. There's a lot of pink cluster dots. That's Canton Club. The green dots below are floodway.
I will go down and sit down.
Next slide.
Sit down, sit.
So I want to show you flood reduction benefits. The one lake reduces flooding. That is true. We shouldn't hide that. It removes a lot of the community from the 100-year floodplain. Reduces it to 1%. And there's a caveat I told you I would say, and that's the next section. Next one. And that's flood inducements. So I told you, you move water faster, you create flooding downstream. So increased flood risk. That's section 7B7. Let's go to the next slide. I want to go ahead and move to it. So back to that last map, all of the structures down here that are, it says they're benefiting because they're going to be elevated. If you look at page 225, they're actually elevated because there's going to be more flooding. And it's specifically EIS page 225, 221 says that they're only looking at the structures, I believe with first floor flooding of 5 inches or greater. I mean, I've talked about this some, I'm still a little confused with the definitions. So one thing I want to point out, if your neighbor has 5 inches more of flooding, it's very likely that you also have some additional flooding that maybe didn't trigger this threshold. There's somewhere else in that document you have where it says induced flooding is actually 3 inches or more, based on the expectation. So there seems to be a missing 2 inches here. Not sure what's happening. Next slide. And so I'm going to close out this review section with some maps that I have made separately. These are blobs. The Corps has given us little blobs, and it's hard to tell where they are. So I did some magical GIS work to actually show the neighborhoods. So I went from the left, and using some GIS software, I was able to show that the blobs are, for example, right below Shirley Elementary. So in this area, some structures are going to have a significant enough flood risk to warrant elevations, but we can anticipate then that there's going to be more flooding in that whole area. Same with the next slide. So the section of Richland around the intersection of 49, the old and new 49, next intersection. Next slide, sorry. Same with this area in Byram, and there are a couple more I would show on this slide. Next, so induced flooding, you shove more water downstream, you increase flooding. We actually, and so a big thing here is that the lingo around induced flooding is not very clear, and I believe that we're missing some information. This is, you know, if I believe that the levee board was a more transparent and honest organization, I wouldn't be less paranoid about these things, but I just don't think they are transparent or honest. So, this is it, guys. There's a lot more to this study. Next slide, please. But I did want to show you guys what is the purpose of the study, right? Congress authorized it for flood risk reduction. The plans that had been studied by the levee board have all been dismissed, including the old one lake. And the Corps of Engineers have given them a new one lake that's smaller and more feasible. In the process of doing their work, they stumbled because they legally have to examine non-structural plans. They found one that was really good, but they found a way to trim it down. And now the Corps of Engineers and the levee board have sort of come into agreement that they like this new lake. It's going to require more studies, congressional action, and there's going to be some organizing around this flooding. The people of South Jackson, just like y'all, like, don't want no water, right? So, I want to leave it to you guys. I want to again emphasize that this thing does help your neighborhood, right? That's that last map. It shows all those green dots. Those are good. But it's at the cost of more waiting, whether it's 18 months or 140 months, congressional action, and more fighting. So I want to stop right here. I'll love to answer any detailed questions, but I'm going to not this much. Scott?
I can go with that. Yeah. One concern I have moving forward. One concern I have moving forward is one of the assumptions that this report makes is about climate change. And you're trying to predict human behavior of the whole world. I mean, that's really what this takes. You know, where will we be 100 years from now depends on the decisions that the world makes now. And, you know, I'm a psychologist by training. Predicting future behavior is hard. But the best predictor of future behavior is past behavior. That's been true throughout time. We humans don't like to change. We don't. We love our automobiles in the United States. We love them. We love them more than I think we should, especially considering the environmental damage that they cause. But that's just my opinion. The problem is that the carbon emissions in the United States are massive. And, you know, per capita, we're the biggest polluter per capita. Bottom line is, flood maps based on past flooding or predicted future flooding based on various climate predictions. And what Abby sent me an article from 2023 in which the FEMA director said, no, the current FEMA maps, the current 1% map is based on past flooding, not predicted flooding based on escalating climate impacts. And, you know, I've been delving into climate impact studies, and, you know, the climate impact report for the United States, the fifth climate impact report for the United States, that's been my go-to. And, you know, it varies. You know, what they're predicting is that there will be more flooding, more intense rain in the future. But we also might have long periods of drought. You know, and so my take-home message for climate change so far is we can expect weather extremes. And if you just turn on the news every night, that's what we're seeing. Every night, it seems like the main national news story is some kind of a serious flood, a fire, a drought, a heat wave. And that's my concern, is that we have to be planning for the worst. I mean, to be wise, to have this plan be wise, we have to plan for the worst and then hope for the best. And then, of course, change our behavior. Thank you.
I would like to point out something regarding that comment, Juan, if you don't mind. The Corps of Engineers did take into account some aspect of climate change. You can find that it's in the hydrology and hydraulics report, in that the inundation maps that they are using are not the FEMA maps. They recalculated them with an improved model, and they calculated the hydrology to 2080, to the expected level of rainstorms in 2080. But I mean, apart from that, that's going to be the comeback that the Army Corps of Engineers tells you if you provide them that comment. But I agree with you completely. Let me point out, for example, that the National Weather Service has been pointing out for the last 5 years that the area at risk of high winds has moved from where it was before to another area that includes Jackson. And the way that we prepare for those risks is find out where are the risks and then put ourselves as much as we can outside of the risk. That means on the flood side that we don't build anymore where there is a risk of flooding. And on the wind side, it means that we build structures that are strong enough that they are able to sustain the kind of winds that we are going to be seeing. And that all depends on the local government building permit office, making sure that the homes are building up to the code that makes sure that those houses are going to be resistant to the risk that they are going to be exposed to. That's all.
Well, I would like to take this opportunity also to say that, you know, one of the things that we have to be mindful of is that we have the space and the attention now. And if we don't address our concerns now, while there's a mindset to allocate funding toward our shortfalls and our situations, then odds are, if we miss this opportunity, we can't project when the next opportunity will come. It will have to be something very catastrophic for them to come back and allocate more funding toward our specific concerns after they have allocated these funds toward what was supposed to be our solution. So I'm hoping that in response to this DEIS, we can definitely take the different plans and insert something that can address our situations with the mindset that this is our opportunity to be a part of it. And we don't know when we'll have this space again. In addition to saying that, was there, you have broken down and looked at the DEIS and presented to us the different things that are shared in there. Was there any particular option that our community should be looking forward to trying to support and build on versus over all of the rest of it? Was there a conclusion in that regard?
No, I didn't see a single option of it. Both help the communities and it's readily implementable.
Not even a mindset to expand on the option that included the Candy Club levy?
Well, it's, so, I didn't see that. That's something we want to pursue, I think. I mean, if I had to formulate my own plan, I would say something like, I don't think there's any legal reasoning for cutting out tributaries, so I'll redo that study to identify structures to buy out or elevate, but then also just like A1 with Canton Club, but it would be maybe like A1 with these like smaller levees like the one in Canton Club, Parkway, McLeod. I think that maybe that's kind of what I have in mind right now. I don't think that's comprehensive in itself, but I just don't have the tools to really define something more in depth.
Well, forgive me for taking
my-
too much. Go ahead. Go ahead, Ricardo.
No, well, two things. One, this is a draft EIS, and it is draft because the core has to take in comments and respond to those comments. And as there is a section, I don't have the reference right now, the page right now, but it says that as a result of the comments received to the draft EIS, the core has to respond to it and can prepare a different alternative than the ones presented by taking a different combination of the combination thereof. In the first part of the combination thereof, they list the kinds of options that can be that they took into account to put together their alternatives D and E, and the A1 as well. So yes, you could propose a different combination of combination thereof of alternatives. You could put some things from the Alt A1 and from the Alt E, etc., and create your community. Say, here, Army Corps of Engineers, this is the combination thereof that we would like. Of course, that if that comes from a single voice, from me, from Juan, from any of us, that's not going to have much weight. For that, you would need to coordinate as a community, responding to it and say, we don't like any of the ones that you put forth. Here is the one that we would prefer.
And that goes back, speaking of having that community voice, that kind of goes back to what Larry was saying, bringing in more people, more businesses.
Well, speaking of tributaries, we did not spend a lot of time on tributaries since they were saying that in their plan, it had the option that we were looking at, it had been eliminated. But when we were looking at the tributaries, did we not find that the core map that was looking at the impact that the tributaries would have on whatever option it was, it wasn't even the same map that was used previously, or there was a difference in even the areas that were being considered?
So, for some context here, when you look at the Corps' flood maps,
Right.
it looks like they don't do the modeling for flooding past certain points. So, for example, if you look at the maps, they never even make it to Scott's house. Scott had to leave. He lives right on Eubanks, an area that floods. And if you look at a FEMA flood map, his creek, just like Lynch Creek, goes up, and it's almost like a hand that spreads out with fingers going in different directions. The Corps map doesn't show that. Lynch Creek ends at some point.
Right, so we know that at Scott's house, he had some flooding, and the FEMA map does not even include.
The FEMA does.
FEMA does, but the map that the Corps is using does not even include that same area.
Yeah, I have no idea why. But and that was before they did the trimming. This was the maps that they used over a year ago when they started the scoping process.
You know, I'm interested in
Certainly.
downstream effects too.
I want you to take this, and Ricardo wanted to come in.
Oh, okay.
I just wanted to say that is one request that you could make from the course, release the new flood maps, flood models that they have developed for this, so that you can compare them with the FEMA maps and the Appendix F, no, Appendix E, which is the hydrologic and hydraulics appendix, would have to be beefed up a lot by providing you more details, including the outputs from those maps, so that you can compare what FEMA says with what the Corps says, and see what is the effect of the Corps calculations on the tributaries.
My question is about the downstream effects. You know, I've been working on talking to people downstream in various places and have some stories coming out. But so I was looking at what was in the Colonel's report here that addresses that, and it talks about that watershed study. So I guess a couple of parts of discussion. One is if your sense is that this watershed study would be done before they make a decision, or if it would be done after they are, embracing an alternative, and then before, and then also it's like what is happening now, even among the people who are worried about the lake, right? To, I guess, use the lingo, remodel any effects that this particular weir, the way they're doing it now, would have downstream, and if there's efforts to kind of put together that opposition, if that makes sense, because this one's, for obvious reasons, this meeting's really focused on Jackson area, but then you've got the whole other issues all the way down. So I'm just, any comments around that anybody has, I'm curious about it.
Yes, Jill, you can see in the commander's report, section 10, paragraph 1, that such comprehensive watershed study would require an authorization by a Water Resource Development Act. I don't know enough to weigh on that statement, but in principle they are saying that additional money would be required for that.
And then also the commander's report talks about authorization and money to actually consider the combination alternatives too. So, we can't just say, oh, this is our preferred alternative. that we have in this process to really unify behind that and say, you know, hey, congressional leaders in Mississippi, this is something that people throughout the river watershed want, whether they're in Jackson or downstream or, you know, above Jackson in the headwaters. Because that can benefit every single person, you know, and the resource at large. But, you know, this is the time to take advantage of having the attention to really lift that up as that needs to happen while we try and get more momentum and expand that alternative one to include, you know, people who are in the tributaries, people who are, you know, in different neighborhoods that are experiencing chronic flooding, as well as you know, some of the nature-based solutions, because the river also needs, you know, restoration opportunities, the nature park opportunity that I know MPUP is working on with the community here. And that's a great example of, you know, trying to have the river help people with their flooding. So we need to see some of that, you know, built into the plan moving forward.
Just a quick editorial statement, that William Days watershed study was done, it should have been done 20 years ago or something. But, you know, here we are, yeah.
Or just like Dion said, like this, it just should have been like these around time of like 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Guys, it's time. Donna, thank you for sticking around. I know that you told me you might have to leave early, but
No,
glad
it's
you
good.
were hooked. I said there's food compliments of MCOP. Ms. Ramona, if you're still there, thank you. Carl, thank you for offering the space. On behalf of the church.
And
Just between you and I, none of these benefit me, right?
The projects.
No, that I,
We're going to,
Well, the lake kind of liberties.
Well, wonderful to be with you guys. I'm going to say goodbye.
thank you, Ricardo.
Bye-bye.
We're going to officially close out with a prayer. I know there'll be several smaller communications among us and discussions. However, we want to close out this portion and bless the food in the process. And that way we know you can start your individual conversations that with your insight of what can help. Let us pray. Our God and our Father, we thank you again for giving us this opportunity. We pray that the things that have been discussed have provided some information and some understanding to each of us who have attended in whatever way we participated. We thank you for all of our participants, and we pray that you will bless our efforts as we try to service our communities and make these situations better for our respective objectives. We thank you for our leadership and our presenters and all those who participated in the process. We just pray that you will help us to make the flooding situation better, and then we'll have cooperation from others who will be in the decision-making process as we try to provide our perspective to their understanding. We ask you to place a blessing on the food that will be nourishing to our bodies. We ask that you bless this church and this location and the leadership here for allowing us to have this space to have this discussion. It's in the name of Jesus that we pray and ask it all. Let us all say, amen.
Amen.
Amen.